Our final presenter this morning is Mr. Eldred Davis.
Good morning. Nice to be back here again. I'm just going to read this to you. I put this together when I was asleep, so probably a few things missing. Danny Williams became the Premier of Newfoundland in 2003, not long after he, like most of his predecessors, announced that he would be the one to outdo Joey Smallwood and complete the destruction of Labrador's Grand River. In 2007, he created Nalcor to become their energy corporation. This took in Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro and, among others, the restored Lower Churchill project. This was given the mandate of building his vanity project, and steps were taken to ensure that nothing could deflect it from that assignment. He hired several friends and acquaintances to start and gave them what appears to be an unlimited budget and immunity from the Freedom of Information Act and set them on their way. In order to keep the focus on dams in Labrador, the amount of electricity required was set so high that most other available sources of generation would be dismissed as inadequate. This is an artificial restriction, and it meant alternate and multiple smaller sources would not be given serious consideration. They insisted that dams at Muskrat Falls and Gull Island Rapids was the only solution. Last year, the plan was modified so that Muskrat Falls power would be sent directly to their island. None of the power was meant to be used in Labrador, although a growing discontent caused a proponent to offer up some amount as a carrot dangling from a stick in order to appease some of the outrage. The plan was to produce enough electricity to look after their island's needs for the foreseeable future, give a substantial amount to Emera, and have enough left over to export. A second dam at Gull Island Rapids was to follow with the intent to export all that output. The cost of the first dam and transmission lines is set at $6.2 billion, with the generation set at 7.7 cents per kilowatt and delivered 14.3 cents per kilowatt minimum. This is in 2010 dollars, and after the usual cost overruns, it could total 20 cents per kilowatt or more to Newfoundland households. An unexpected benefit is the replacement of the oil-burning electricity generator at Holyrood, which is currently used during peak demand periods. This is expected to use about 40% of the amount of power. 20% is supposed to go to Emera at no cost for 35 years in exchange for their contribution of $1 billion toward the cost of transmission facilities. The remainder is supposed to be sold in the Maritimes New England market at a price that can only compete if it is below cost. This is guaranteed money loser and will only succeed in raising rates for their Newfoundland customers and increase the provincial debt. It is without doubt not economically sustainable. The proponent has said that there would be no price increase to Labrador customers if any of that power were to be sold here, but it is hard to believe that they would still charge the current rate of less than 3.3 cents per kilowatt when it would cost them at least 7.7 before transmission cost is added. Is this believable, or is it just a case of tell them what they want to hear? It is, however, in keeping with their apparent practice of selling at a loss. Any other utility or profit-oriented Crown corporation with a business plan like that would be dismissed or dissolved and replaced with something that could exhibit some competency. There are very few benefits that would come to Labrador if these dams get built, but there would be tremendous losses, not the least of which would be the destruction of our unique and magnificent Grand River. The effects would be far-reaching and last for generations. This river has been healing from the Churchill Falls project. It is adapting to the altered seasonal flows, and we are adapting to its present state. It will never be what it once was, but it is ours, and we will take it as it currently exists. After 40 or so years, the fish are not as contaminated with toxic methylmercury as they once were, and their numbers seem to be increasing downstream of Muskrat Falls. Even seals are more common near the falls these days. The proponent wants to release a whole new course of methylmercury into the river, but this time it would be nearly 300 kilometers closer to our communities. The fish, seals, and fish-eating birds would again become too contaminated with methylmercury to be safely consumed for another generation. Above the proposed dams, catastrophic changes would occur. Riverbank slumping, landslides, and accelerated shoreline erosion would put severe stress on the river's fish species over time. Some would have great difficulty adapting to the changes, and some populations would decline, maybe to the point where recovery would be unlikely. 2 new dams would segregate the breeding adults, leading to less spawning success and less young each year. The proponent claims that they can fix things so the aquatic environment is actually better than it was pre-flooding, better than what the Creator made. But after researching and listening to the debate on this, I believe this would be another failure like in most other large reservoirs. A good example of the concern we might expect from the proponent is at the Churchill Falls project, where a large number of whitefish become blockaded downstream of the lobstick and whitefish control structures, and basically swim around until they succumb to stress and starvation. When the proponent was asked about this, they said that they now open and close the gates at times that minimize the numbers of whitefish killed and injured by being swept through the control gates, which is well and good, but they're only going to die anyway. It seems like nothing is being done for the fish below the structures, and this problem was identified in 1974. In 1980, the federal DFO, after reviewing the EIS for that period's version of this project, suggested that the reservoirs would become pike sucker-dominated communities, and also recommended that approval for the project be withheld. The big difference now is that the proponent claims to be capable of total mitigation. I suspect that if this proposal gets that far along, the red ink would be so deep that monitoring and mitigation would be quickly shoved aside. Several years of steady construction activity, traffic increases, new roads, new transmission line corridors, and the general presence of people could be expected to have harmful effects on the area's wildlife, especially the Red Wine Mountains woodland caribou. These animals, unlike the George River caribou, don't like open or disturbed areas, and at times will turn around and retrace its steps rather than cross an open area. This is significant because these caribou often cross the river to access their southern range. And if they encounter unfamiliar conditions, they may have to abandon the south side of the river, which satellite tracking shows they do utilize frequently. The proponent acknowledges that this herd is in danger of being lost, but blame it on mainly hunting. Dam failure is a significant concern that people should be considering. There are many scenarios described in the EIS that describe how different failures would be observed downstream. If the dams were to be built as proposed, a failure for whatever reason would be bad if it were the dam at Muskrat Falls, worse if it were the dam at Gull Island that takes out the downstream dam at Muskrat Falls, and if a sudden large uncontrolled release of water from Churchill Falls took out the 2 downstream dams, it would be catastrophic. If the proposed dam at Gull Island were to fail and take out the Muskrat Falls Dam, the damage would be extensive, and that's an understatement. The river crossing at Black Rock would be overtopped. The Trans-Labrador Road would be washed out in places. The hydro transmission line and substation and the municipal water supply would all be inundated. Most of the Happy Valley section of the town south of Palliser Crescent and east of Churchill Street would be flooded, and that's most of Happy Valley. Mud Lake would be almost entirely flooded, and flooded again, that's an understatement. If these dams were to be built, no doubt they would be built to the highest standards, as the proponent claims, but I worry about the locations. At Gull Island Rapids, the river bedrock is so cracked and fractured that the design plan had to relocate part of the installation because of the poor rock quality. The drilling has been going on for years, presumably to find an acceptable location to anchor a 99-meter high dam. At Muskrat Falls, the location of the proposed dam is between the south side of the river and the large rock knoll. The north side of the knoll is connected to the north side of the river, north shore of the river, I guess is more accurate, by a narrow, high strip of land. This neck is composed of various grades of marine clays, sediments, and different sizes of sand. This neck has had many slumps and landslide over the years. The most recent was in the early 70s. If the water level were to rise as in a reservoir, this would seep into the layers of the neck and possibly destabilize it. Trying to block water from saturating the neck would be similar to bailing a leaky boat with a teaspoon. If this neck of land were to slump all at once, the reservoir would immediately empty downstream. These dams, this whole proposal is so unnecessary. It seems to be building dams for the sake of building dams. Only 40% of the power that can be generated, could be generated at Muskrat Falls, could be used on their island, and only during peak loads in winter. This amount could be locally generated if there was the will to do so. There are many types of energy productions and ways to conserve. Nalcor does have a gas and oil division, and it should be utilized. If the expensive oil that's for the Holyrood thermal plant could be substituted with cheap gas as a fuel for this plant, the savings would be very significant, and it could be the catalyst to get the gas industry in gear. Gas could be purchased at current low prices until local supplies are available. With the plant modernized to the maximum, there's a chance that the greenhouse gases produced might be less than that produced by the proposed hydro stations in Labrador. And they tell you this is clean and green. Greenhouse gases, especially methane, are produced in high numbers from high-pressure turbines and large reservoirs. They probably forgot to mention that. The wind power industry is growing quickly and proving itself to be very appropriate in many systems as an addition or supplement to other forms of generation. There is no doubt that more wind power could be integrated into their systems if the promoter-proponent took it seriously. Conservation and demand management is a tool that could replace energy demand by a large amount if properly implemented. The promoter-proponent claims that a large part of the additional demand for electricity in winter is due to the increase in electric baseboard home heating. The way that customers in Labrador who on the diesel-generated systems keep demand down is by requiring them to pay very high rates as consumption increases. This usually precludes electric heat. This could work on their island as well if alternate heating systems such as wood pellets were to be promoted. It is not sustainable to dam and destroy rivers for electricity production when there are alternate sources. But when there are no more rivers, with few remaining are gone, what do we do? Rivers have an intrinsic value, as does the land that is proposed to be flooded. I think that the highly skilled and motivated engineers and technicians at Nalcor must be ashamed to admit it to admit that they are in the lower Churchill project division. To be capable of embracing and benefiting from new technologies by being told to work on a dam must be a real letdown for some of these people. As for Labrador, there's plenty of power already developed. It just needs to be made available when and where required. Negotiations with Hydro-Quebec need to begin with the goal of having recall power freed up as required for Labrador customers. Killing a river under these circumstances should be made a criminal offense, a crime against nature and a crime against humanity. I really feel for the people of Lake Melville, of Rigolette, Northwest River, Chesapeake, Mud Lake, and to a lesser degree, Happy Valley Goose Bay. Some of these people are carrying on a lifestyle that is little changed in generations except for modern conveniences. If the proposed dams are built and people are told that they cannot eat traditional and healthy foods from the lake, what will they do? For some, store-bought food just doesn't measure up. This is as close as you can come in this country to cultural genocide. It has sometimes been difficult over these past few weeks to observe the promoter-proponent give their presentations and responses. Some of them give the impression of being extremely arrogant. They give the impression that they consider the value of our land to be nothing, that the value of our waters to be nothing, that the value of our cultures to be nothing. This attitude smacks of the vilest form of colonialism, that what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine, and I will do what I like with it. This proposed project will not do anything to reduce the level of hatred felt by the peoples of Labrador towards the government of Newfoundland. My parents taught me not to hate anyone. That it is not a good thing to feel that way about anyone. So I do not feel hatred toward these people who want to destroy our river. But I really, really hate what they want to do to Labrador and the peoples of Labrador. Hopefully that's all I'm going to say on this. You won't have to hear my terrible voice anymore.
Mr. Davis, I want to thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge the fact on behalf of the panel that we know that you've been an individual who's put in very long hours. You've been here every day, I believe, that we've been here, and have contributed actively towards this review. I want to thank you for that. I think we have no questions, so thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much for your consideration.